What's going on, guys? This is Rob. If you guys enjoy my content, make sure you hit the subscribe button and make sure you hit that little bell so you never miss out on my sexy voice. So picking up with part 2 of Ultimatum, again, this is like the aftermath, right? Like what we know so far is that Magneto is in possession of Thor's hammer, and Magneto has basically instigated this massive catastrophe across the planet Earth, right? Like he froze over Eastern Europe, he sent a massive tidal wave against New York and essentially flooded and destroyed the entire city. And so now we just kind of pick up with picking up the pieces is really what this is, just kind of the aftermath and figuring out what's going on. However, the funny thing about this is that Peter Parker's attempts, like his pleas to basically find someone to help him out to deal with the devastation, is met with the Incredible Hulk. Now, here's one of the big differences between the Incredible Hulk in the Ultimate Universe and the Incredible Hulk in the main Marvel Universe. In the Ultimate Universe, the Incredible Hulk eats people. He's as barbaric as you can imagine him being. It's almost a little strange, because if you're Peter and you're in this situation, the Incredible Hulk is unpredictable. And so the Incredible Hulk being here and helping out Peter could easily turn into the Incredible Hulk being here and eating Peter Parker. So it gets kind of crazy. Of course, the Incredible Hulk is here to help. But following this, you pick up with Iron Man basically arriving in the Triskelion alongside, or I guess really with Captain America. Something else that ends up happening here is we also pick up with Carol Danvers. Now, Carol Danvers in the Ultimate Universe is really more like Maria Hill in the main Marvel Universe. In the main Marvel Universe, Carol Danvers was originally an Air Force pilot, and then she was kind of enamored with Mar-Vell, really, more than anything else. And the idea was that she idolized him and wanted to be like him. Well, of course, during the battle between the original Mar-Vell and Jan-Rog, there was the Psych Magnetron, which basically made the wishes of those come true if they were in proximity of it or trapped inside of it. And Carol Danvers, who'd been thrown in the vicinity of this thing, wished to have the powers of Mar-Vell, and then she became Miss Marvel and went on to become one of the many superheroes that exist in Marvel and one of the more prominent female figures. In the Ultimate Universe, Carol Danvers is just a SHIELD agent. That's all she ever really was. And then from there, while she had roles in pretty significant moments, there was a story that took place prior to this called Ultimate Power. And really, it was like a crossover between 2006 and 2008 between the Ultimate Universe and Squadron Supreme. And so it was a way to kind of write out Nick Fury, basically to send him over to the Squadron Supreme universe and have Carol Danvers take his place and just see what it would be like when she's director of SHIELD and how fans would perceive it. Now, the other half of this is that relationships between the Ultimates and Nick Fury were not that great. And in fact, there was a point where the Ultimates basically defected and took off, and Nick Fury was just kind of left to his own devices. Now, Carol Danvers' response here is, look, things don't have to be that way. But of course, Tony Stark is kind of like in a position where he's like, look, this is the last place we need to be talking about right now. Like, this is the last thing we need to be discussing because Captain America may very well die. And so that's the nature of this. That's one of the benefits, but the drawbacks of the Ultimate Universe is in the main Marvel Universe, you had a lot of massive events, but because the main Marvel Universe had been going on for, upwards of 40 or 50, sometimes even 60 years, depending on what story and comics we're talking about, there could be a lot of buildup that was done. For example, the death of Captain America came out of Ed Brubaker's run, and that ran on for a few years before Captain America actually died. In the Ultimate Universe, you didn't really have that. While you did have stories like Ultimate X-Men and Ultimate Spider-Man, Ultimate Fantastic Four, and the Ultimates themselves, by and large, the Ultimate Universe was flying by the seat of its pants. Now, the other half of this is we actually pick up with Ben Grimm dealing with Susan Storm. Now, again, this isn't a great big huge moment. It's just the idea of Susan Storm's powers kind of subconsciously growing and expanding and having an influence even when she's unconscious. And this really hits by way of the fact that, like, she makes the floor invisible. She ends up sending Ben Grimm flying into a wall, different things like that. It's nothing too major. Really, the big thing that kind of comes out of this, or at least one of the big things that kind of come out of this, is one, Reed Richards has taken Namor the Submariner captive, and two, he's actually grabbed by Doctor Doom. And the reason why is because, remember, much like the main Marvel Universe, Doctor Doom holds absolute allegiance to Latveria. He is that beholden to them. Doctor Doom basically hits up Reed Richards and says, look, man, you got Princess Power from the Squadron Supreme universe. She can basically grab Nick Fury. We can figure out what's going on, pull our resources together or what have you. But like, this is not a Namor the Submariner thing like Reed Richards believes it is. It's Magneto. Now, Reed Richards knows this because Charles Xavier uses telepathy to tell him that, but this is one of the weird things about Reed. So in the Ultimate Universe, Reed is a lot younger than he is in the main Marvel Universe. And that was because it was designed to basically tell his story from the time he was a kid up until the time that he was an adult. But because of the fact that he's so young, he doesn't quite have the wisdom and experience of older Reed Richards. And this has been met with mixed reviews. There are people who love the idea of a younger Reed, who believe that like a younger Reed is more interesting. There's a lot more storytelling that can be told with a younger version of Reed. But there are people who also kind of look at that and say, yeah, but I prefer experienced Reed Richards. Like, I prefer the one who's seen some things, who's been around. It's like the debate between New 52 Superman versus classic Superman. It really kind of depends on where you picked up. But the fact remains here that we end up picking up with Thor. Now, this is the cool thing about Thor. Remember, when it comes to the idea of the Ultimate Universe and when it comes to the whole notion of like various superheroes, it is designed to be more tangible and a lot more grounded. However, because Thor is rooted in mythology, and because Thor is such a prominent character, even if not, that popular in terms of comic book sales, because he's so well known in Marvel Comics, you can't really mess with it too much. And so what Marvel did, and we covered this in our video on the origin of Ultimate Thor, what Marvel did is they said, okay, so this version of Thor originates on Asgard, but was basically banished to Earth, much like he was in the main Marvel universe. The difference here is that Asgard was destroyed in the 1930s after Thor was banished, so he could basically never go back. And so the result is that Thor initially believed himself to be human, and then ultimately, as time progressed, began to become aware of what it was that he was about. But again, that's kind of how these cool things fit in, is because when he basically arrives at the Statue of Liberty on Staten Island and finds that Valkyrie seems to be dead, while it is his love interest, he basically ends up like traveling to the realm of Hela, traveling to the realm of Hell itself, and in turn, like essentially trying to get her soul back, saying, look, like I want her character to return. Now, this is actually homage to the original Thor stories by Stan Lee and Jack Kirby, right? Especially Tales of Asgard by Jack Kirby. And the reason why was because there was a point where the character of Sif, who was the love interest of Thor at the time, was actually kidnapped. And of course, Thor went on to rescue her, which made him worthy to lift his hammer for the first time in the main Marvel universe. So this is kind of a tribute to that, kind of a throwback to those old stories. But Hela's response is, if you can defeat my army, then you will get basically like you will get Valkyrie back, or there will be a price to be paid or something along those lines. Now, in the midst of this whole fight, he's met with the arrival of Captain America. So of course, the indication here is that Steve Rogers is actually dead and his soul is trapped in the realm of Hell. It's kind of crazy when you get down to this whole thing. But from here, we basically pick up with Hank Pym trying to find Janet Van Dyne. And this is probably one of the most screwed up parts of the story. And I don't really know why this is in here. It's pretty wild. But you have Hawkeye, who of course his enhanced eyesight will allow him to, spot Jan, whereas Hank Pym may not have been able to pick her up. But where Hawkeye basically locates where he believes she is and then jumps down and starts, sifting through the rubble to try to find her, what he ends up discovering is that the Blob is actually eating Jan Van Dyne. He's actually consuming her. It's almost like something out of Marvel Zombies. It's pretty messed up. Like it's pretty screwed up. Probably one of the weirdest things. I mean, it's not as weird as Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver getting it on, like being lovers in the Ultimate Universe, which yes, they are brother and sister, and yes, it is weird. But it's not as weird as that, but it's still pretty messed up and it's still pretty screwed up. And so from here, we pick up with Magneto traveling to go meet with Charles Xavier. Now, this is one of the coolest parts of the story. Magneto in the Ultimate Universe is vastly different in so many different ways from his main Marvel Universe counterpart, right? I mean, this version of Magneto in the Ultimate Universe is really more akin to like classic Magneto, but even still darker. So in the main Marvel Universe, Magneto has waxed and waned over the years, right? Like he was originally a friend of Xavier, and the two of them basically had a philosophical split in terms of how to deal with humanity and its, perception of mutant kind. This led to them basically becoming enemies, but there was always a kind of respect between the two of them. And even despite what rifts were there was a time where Magneto actually led the X-Men and he led the New Mutants. Following that, he basically departed, went back to being a villain again, and it really just kind of went back and forth. But there was always a grudging respect between the two. And it was always the idea that Magneto was more of a savior / messiah than someone who wanted to like impose his will in a dark and terrible way. In the Ultimate Universe, it's the exact opposite. Magneto is far more cynical. He does not trust humanity in any form or fashion. In this, when Magneto shows up, Xavier's like, well, it was only ever a matter of time before I saw you. Like, it was only a matter of time before you got here. And it was kind of interesting because here, like, you basically have two guys who are indeed mortal enemies. Like, there's no respect between the two. They hate the other. And where Xavier looks at Magneto and says, the fact that you would do something like this is believable. The fact that you would use such power to basically reverse the magnetic poles to instigate this massive global catastrophe is believable. You have really just gone too far. Like, you're really off the edge. And so the response of Xavier is, I will dedicate every minute, I will dedicate every ounce of my strength to seeing your destruction. Up to this point, I've just been a roadblock. I've stood in the way. After this, I will be the cement wall that will keep you from going forward. And that's kind of the cool thing, because Magneto's response is, when God didn't like what it was that he created, he wiped it all away in 40 days and 40 nights. I'll do it in 3. Like, I mean, it's that dark. Like, it's that screwed up. But where Xavier kind of responds by saying, no one's ever going to see you as a messiah. No one's ever going to see you as a person who's leading mutants into a greater future. They're going to see you as a dark and terrible ruler. The response of Magneto is, if all you're ever going to do is stand in my way, then I'll remove you from the equation. And he breaks the neck of Charles Xavier. Magneto kills Xavier. With that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to an end. If you are new here to Comics Explained, make sure you guys hit the sub button to become part of the Rob Corps. If you guys enjoy this video, make sure you drop a like, and I will catch you all later. Cliffhangers. Peace.